just want to show you this quickly. As you have a look at this cutter, where's my finger gone? There you go. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus in on that. No, it's not focusing at the moment. Oh, there we go, there we go. So you'll see a bit of damage at the end of the point there, just here. I've clearly hit something with that. Maybe it was a small stone, maybe it's a little bit of metal in the tree. Come on, come back to me, there we go. And so that cutter will require more sharpening than the other cutters on the chain. So always look for that kind of damage on your chain before you start sharpening, and you're going with the worst case scenario. You want to start with the worst one, and that way, once you've sharpened that up and you're satisfied that you've got that particular cutter sharp, you can then match all the other cutters to that size. That was something I was trying to explain earlier. Okay, I'm just going to show you some sharpening action now. I've actually been sharpening this chain in and out of making this video, and I'm just on the last cutter now. I've already made a start on it, and so I just want to show you the technique I use. So I know from experience the angles at which I want this cutter to look, and to the angles it should be set at. So I'm just gonna. It's a one fluid movement. It's one way. It's not backwards and forwards. It is just all the way through, like that, keeping the file as level as possible. Use gloves if you're doing it this way. Normally you can buy a handle from your local chainsaw shop just to stick on the end there, which holds that file in place. It's a lot nicer than having that point sticking to your hand. But to be honest, I'm used to it. I'm used to the feel of doing it this way. And the amount of times I've had to sharpen chainsaws in the woods or in remote areas, you just have to go with what you've got. So I often just shove the chainsaw between my legs and just sharpen it this way. So I'm quite used to doing it like this. But yeah, keeping the line of the sharpening action in line with the marker on the cutter, and then just keep moving it forwards in one movement like that. Now, something I do, which I don't recommend, I do this, and what I'm doing there is I'm just picking off the burrs off the cutter, and it takes the excess metal off the end of the cutter, so it brings the line into a nice straight line across the cutter which I'm looking at. And then once I get it to that stage, I then finish off with a few more strokes of the file, and done. And that is nice and sharp. So, and one way you can test the sharpness, as I mentioned earlier, you can just use, I've got a pencil here, you can just let it peel off the wood on the point, and it gives you a rough idea on how sharp it is. And that feels pretty sharp to me. If I'm being really honest, I do a bit of that as well. Shouldn't do that. Don't recommend doing this whatsoever, but I gauge how sharp it is. When I'm in a rush, I do that. So, but don't do that. Anyway, that is sharpening covered. Okay, the next thing I just want to show you is the guard link, taking the guard links down. So this is a fairly new chain. I've marked up where I'm going to start. I used a pencil mark on top of the cutter here where I want to start this process, and I went through and sharpened up all the cutters. Yeah, keeping memorizing how many strokes I was doing on each cutter, and aiming to keep each cutter equal length. I know from experience what I have to do if one side ends up longer than the other, which can happen. That's quite natural. You always have a stronger side when you're sharpening a chainsaw by hand, and so you might find that the right side wears quicker than the left side from your sharpening, or vice versa. So what you need to do is just compensate maybe some extra strokes on your weaker side, and then yeah, and it'll work out. So yeah, guard link. I know that where I've got these cutters to, I probably need 2 strokes on the flat file. So come across here. When the guard links are new, it can be a bit hard to get them going. So just maybe a couple of soft touches, and then all the way through, one consistent stroke all the way through. Okay, that's done. That's 2 strokes. Then same on the next one. 1, 2, done. Next one. 1, 2, done. 1, 2, you get the idea. Okay. Horrible sound when you're doing this often. Some people really don't like it. Doesn't bother me too much, but it's got to be done. I'll now continue that throughout the rest of my chain, just to keep the guard links roughly in check and down to where I want them to be. Okay, I think it'd be good for me to show you this little tool I do sometimes use. It's quite an old one, this one, but it gives you the cutting angles here for when you're sharpening the chain. And so I've got 30 degrees and 35 degree options on this one. I don't have 25 degrees on here. It is an old one, so yeah, there are newer ones available with other options available. And what you do is you slide that on top of your chain, and when you're sharpening, if you're like, I've got a 30 degree angle here on this device right here, as you can see there, just letting the camera zoom in. When you put that on top next to your cutter, you can use that as an alignment with your file to get the angle right. Ooh, just nudge the, to get the angle right and bring that across to match the angle on this device. The other thing this has is a guard link height measurement tool, and so what that is, so you can look up how high the guard links are on your chain. Again, if I bring up this organ chain box here, even though it's not an organ chain, so don't get confused with that, you've got the guard link heights here. So you find the model of chain you've got. So if it's a steel chain you've got, you go to the back of the steel box. If it's a Husqvarna chain you've got, you go back to the, you get the picture. But you look up the guard link height, what it should be here, to maximise performance of your chain. And then you can use this tool, and this has a couple of measurement options on it. So I've got 1 mil or 0.65 mil here. I believe this is probably a 0.65 mil chain that's on here now in terms of the guard link height. So what you can do is you come up to the guard link. Where's the so I'm just letting the camera zoom in. Here we go, that's better. Slide this across so you reach the guard link. Let me just, sorry, I should be using gloves, but I'm not. I'm just trying to get this to line up in the camera. Bear with me. Okay, there we go. We can use that one. So this one here, I've now got the device set on the cutter, and if I slide it to the guard link, it should be just touching the guard link and sliding over it nicely, just slightly rubbing the guard link. If it's not, I can file down. If it's protruding this top edge, then I can file the guard link down to this height using the flat file. So once I've done that, I take the tool off, I file it down, then I remeasure with this tool here and make sure the height of the guard link is sitting just underneath this top level on this device I've got here, and that will correspond well with the cutter. So as the chain's going round, it basically determines the chisel depth. Now I've seen people take this right down low when they've had a brand new chain put on because they think it's going to improve the cutting experience. What that does is it increases the vibration dramatically on the chain, and will then, as it increases the vibration, you run the risk of chain failure and the chain actually snapping, which I've had a bunch of times before, not because of that reason though. And so it's unnecessary to do that kind of thing. It can cause a lot of damage to the chain as well. Not to mention that the chain's more likely to jam in the wood as well as you're cutting, and so that could be quite frustrating when you're on a job and you go to apply the chainsaw to the wood that you're cutting, and it just jams because you've taken the guard links down too much. So don't do that. Yeah. Equally so though, you do need to keep on top of those guard links, otherwise you'll find as you're sharpening the chainsaw coming and you're wearing the cutter down, you'll literally be, you'll see the sawdust will literally turn into dust, as your chisel effect will be very little on the actual cutting of the chain. So last thing to show you in this angle is the cutter here. You're looking for, imagine that's a crest of a wave. You want that to be a perfect semicircular crest on the end of the cutter. Let me bring this back into view a bit better. And then you want this to be as pointy as possible. And you can use an old bit of wood, a bit of soft wood, just to slowly scale off the points after you've sharpened, to deburr it, and also to make sure that it is actually sharp once you've sharpened it. And yeah, so that is that basically. I think I've shown you everything I need to show you regarding how to sharpen your chain. So let's leave it there for now.